We're not talking about the best of them. We're just talking about the rest of them.
Not the worst parts, but the best parts. And the best parts we have. The best of the rest.
Hello, and my balls are freezing. Welcome to Best of the Rest, the show where we take a second look at movies that were poorly received upon release and challenge ourselves to only talk about the things we like and what the movie does well. It's Christmas month, and this week we are talking the 1998 film Jack Frost. My name is Chris Logan, and I am joined, as always, by a co-host I wished into existence, Andrew Williams. You ready for this one, Andrew?
I'm going to try not to focus on the implications of you wishing me into existence. I think that would send me into a spiraling existential crisis that for this show we really just don't need to get into. But yes, I'm a big fan of this film. I'm excited to jump into it and share what we already know with our listeners at large.
Dude, I love this movie. It's not very, kind of jumping ahead here. It's not very often we get to talk about movies that, I genuinely am already a very big fan of. I mean, just by the premise of our show, we're diving into movies that most people would agree are maybe lackluster, poorly received, as we say. But this one, by all metrics that we're going to talk about, you can say is poorly received. But I've kind of always been a big fan. This is a movie that I owned growing up, probably on VHS, I have to imagine. And I watched it kind of all the time. I mean, year round is something that would be in my rotation and I'd put on and watch and enjoy. But I also, growing up, I don't know if I know of any other person that watched this movie or knew about it. And we're going to talk about the numbers, but it kind of flopped at the box office. Didn't make much of a splash, but I enjoyed it. I've always been a Michael Keaton fan growing up. Of course, Batman is the obvious one, but even Multiplicity was a big hit in our household. One of my favorite comedies from the 90s.
I love Multiplicity. Thank God. That movie
So
is
good.
amazing. It's for Michael Keaton's. There's no way you can go wrong with that. Absolutely not. I have a fun Multiplicity story for later. But we'll do that later.
Oh, hot tease. Save it for later. What's your history with this one though? Jack Frost, the Christmas snowman movie. Did you watch it a lot in your younger years?
I know I saw it when I was younger. We'll talk more about the music, but I love the soundtrack to this, and actually bought the Jack Frost band singles off of Amazon MP3 or something way back in the day because I needed them on my playlists. But yeah, I've seen this before. I saw it as a kid. I don't know if I saw it in theaters. I feel like I didn't. But then I definitely watched it when it entered rotation. Because I don't know if you kids remember this, but it took a year for movies to come out on home video after being in theaters the first time around.
Especially
remember,
Christmas movies. They wait until the season comes back around again,
Jingle All the Way. I remember getting the tape of that on Thanksgiving. But it had come out the previous Christmas. So it took that long for things to come. So when this started hitting home video and airing on TV, I feel like I definitely saw it then. And then I've gone back to it over the years. And I love this movie. Don't misunderstand me. But I actually don't watch it all the time because the end makes me so sad. It's unbelievable how much I ugly cry at the ending of this movie. But yeah, definitely a fan. Like you said, I love Michael Keaton, from the good to the bad. Like you said, obviously Batman, but I do like when he kind of gets to mix the drama with the comedy a little bit. Obviously he's always kind of got that sardonic, dry sense of humor, that sarcasm in so much of what he does. But I always kind of enjoyed when he got a chance, especially nowadays, he's almost known as being a dramatic actor as well as a comedic actor just through things like Dope Sick and The Founder and things like that. But here, He gets to mix in a little bit of that. But even back in the day, with stuff like Clean and Sober or One Good Cop, which maybe not the greatest movie in the world, but he's given it his best shot. I've always been a big fan, and so. But yeah, this movie is actually, like I said, the ending wrecks me so bad, but I do love it. And part of that obviously is just how great obviously the cast and the chemistry amongst them all is. It makes it all the more sad for me. But yeah, it's definitely been a staple. I watch it off and on over the years. I think you sent it to me a couple years ago, and I sat down and like really rewatched it again and was just like, man, this is great and so sad.
Agreed on both accounts. We're going to talk about it. We're going to go through our favorite scenes and favorite performances and all that good stuff. But first, let's set the stage a little bit. This movie was released December 11th of 1998 and was made on a budget of $85 million. I found a few sources with a few different ranges in that budget, but that's coming from Box Office Mojo, which I typically trust. At the box office, though, it only brings in $34.6 million. So it is a massive flop and a huge loss for the studio. Critically, not well received at all. It only holds a 19% on Rotten Tomatoes for a critic score. Audiences, as they tend to be, are a little bit higher, but the audience score is only 40%. So even the friendlier audience score is still well into that rotten category. So, yeah. Not well received. It seems like a lot of people, Andrew, don't agree with us, and it's. Look, I'm not gonna say they're wrong, but
Chris, they're wrong.
Okay, you said it, brother.
No, that is interesting, and also just that high end number, that 85 million. That just feels insane to say that this movie cost $85 million to make. And I don't know if that's because of the production. Like, I don't know if there was George Clooney and Sam Raimi were attached to it at one point. I don't know if there's payments those guys still had to get, kind of very similar to like a Superman Returns situation where the budget technically included all the failed Superman adaptations from before. So I don't know how much money had to get paid out along the way, but yeah, 85 million. That is just so much money for a movie like this that features a human cast and a snowman puppet.
Yes,
it's a little strange, but I also do love that this movie gets lumped in on Wikipedia with Jack Frost movies, even though the character of Jack Frost has nothing to do with this movie. Unfortunately, no waves made here. I realize all the water is frozen because it's in Colorado, but no, and even in the ensuing years, like you said, no reevaluation, no kind of resurgence, no
like
looking back
cult
and being
following, like, as far as
yeah,
I know. Like I don't come across people on the internet that like also love this movie like us.
Yeah, it's and yeah, we'll talk a little bit more about some of that stuff later. But man, the reviews were definitely not kind. People did not like the snowman, but yeah, it's a bit of a bummer, honestly, just because I like it so much. But the audiences didn't show up in the theaters. The critics didn't like it. It really is pretty much DOA in every way. I think it made $7 million its opening weekend. That's you don't come back from that.
Let's take a look at the creative team behind this movie. We have a number of credited writers, including Mark Steven Johnson, Steve Bloom, Jonathan Roberts, and Jeff Cesario. So breaking that down a little bit, we have Mark Steven Johnson, an alum of our very show. We've actually talked about this gentleman multiple times because they are the writer and director of Daredevil, the Ben Affleck film, and Ghost Rider, both of which have their own episode of Best of the Rest. As we mentioned in those episodes, he broke in, or he got his big break anyway, in the 90s with the comedies Grumpy Old Men and its sequel, Grumpier Old Men. Also wrote the movie Simon Birch, which I'm sure a lot of people remember, which came out shortly before this movie. You're still out there doing the thing. We've talked about the guy before, obviously very talented, but looking at their filmography, it's just so interesting to start off with like kind of low budget comedies and then a little bit of like the family drama, and then boom, it's like full on writing and directing superhero movies.
Yeah, it's like he's got like two distinct phases of his career where he kind of comes through as this kind of cutting his teeth on these like you said, kind of family, even in like adult dramedies, and then like switches hard into superheroes for several years there. And like you said, still out there. Had a movie come out a couple years ago called Love Guaranteed, which is kind of a romantic comedy that's got my favorite actor of all time, Damon Wayans Jr. in it. So still out there doing his thing, but yeah, you can definitely look at that early, like his first 5 movies are Grumpy Old Men, Grumpier Old Men, Big Bully, Simon Birch, and Jack Frost, and there's definitely a lot of shared DNA between those films, I think, especially when you look at like the Grumpy Old Men films, Simon Birch and Jack Frost. Simon Birch actually being Mark Steven Johnson's first directorial effort. It actually comes out the same year as Jack Frost, which is, busy man there for a few years. But yeah, still out there doing his thing. Apparently has a movie coming out this year, Love in the Villa. Not seen it, but he's a writer and director on it. So glad to see him still out there doing his thing.
He is our main screenwriter on this movie, originated the story, but like I said, there's a few other credits. You have Steve Bloom and Jonathan Roberts, which are mostly their work is done together. They're a writing team. Other than this film, the most high-profile movie probably being James and the Giant Peach, and then also Jeff Cesario with some writing on there. Mostly a TV writer, though. The film credits are few and far between on his resume.
Yeah, Roberts and Bloom, by and large, work together. Ironically, though, Jonathan Roberts has a Wikipedia page. Steve Bloom doesn't. I'm not going to look too deep into that. But they've got definitely some credits out there. A few by themselves. Jonathan Roberts apparently was an uncredited writer on The Emperor's New Groove, did additional screenplay material on Monsters, Inc. Couple of big things there. And then Steve Bloom, like I said, most of their stuff is together. And then, yeah, Jeff Cesario is actually the interesting one to me because a lot of his early writing is like live TV specials. Like, his first writing credit on IMDb is the 1994 Billboard Music Awards. And
you don't think of that as needing writers. That's so funny.
You don't. And then like the 1995 Young Comedian special and then Dennis Miller Live are pretty much all what he starts with. And Dennis Miller Live, again, is a talk show. Like, you don't envision a talk show having a writer, but it does. There's a whole team. Somebody's got to write those jokes, folks. The only fiction, really, that he has kind of at the offset of this is a couple episodes of the Larry Sanders Show, which, I don't know if any of you have seen the Larry Sanders Show, but it is a show about a late-night talk show. So it's still kind of existing in the same wheelhouse to the point that his first fiction, you could argue that his first outside of the box thing is the screenplay for Jack Frost, which is it's interesting. Some of that stuff's so interesting to me, just how the lines get drawn and the paths get made between these people and kind of how they get to writing some of the things that they do. It's very interesting to me.
If I had to guess, and I will guess right now, that our director, Troy Miller, is responsible for bringing Jeff Cesario onto this project and punching up the script, because Troy Miller also comes from the world of TV. Tons of TV credits to the name, lots of sitcoms and things you would expect, but also directed a lot of stuff that, again, has a director, but you don't think of as having a director, like the MTV Movie Awards, which they directed plenty of years, and even the Academy Awards a few times. Their film credits, they do have a few beyond just Jack Frost. The probably most infamous, notorious movie they directed would be Dumb and Dumber. The that prequel they made that most people try to forget about. A movie that what? Maybe we'll have a prequel month on this show. Maybe we'll have to talk about that one sometime.
No.
Maybe. We're leaving it at maybe.
Yeah. Well, we'll leave that as a maybe. Yeah, looking at Troy Miller's filmography is interesting because I actually didn't realize this. He is a credited director on every single episode of Arrested Development season 4 and season 5. Every single episode. In season 4, he directs them all with Mitchell Hurwitz, the creator of the show, and he directs every episode of season 5. He's the only credited director in season 5.
Man,
look,
hashtag
not know
PP. I love Arrested Development, but those aren't the credits that you want, right?
Well, yeah. Well, and it's interesting because if you look at the other seasons, there's like a pretty good wealth of talent there. The Russo brothers are in there. Greg Matola, Jay Chandraskar, Paul Feig does a couple of them. There's definitely like a who's who. Patty Jenkins, I think, did some episodes. There's really like, and I will say the Russo brothers recur a lot throughout those early seasons. Some together, some by themselves. So it was interesting. I didn't realize that that those two seasons were directed essentially all by the same guy. I didn't realize that. So that was a fun little thing. But you can see definitely that he's got tons of television credits. He's got tons of stand-up comedy credits. Going back to the 80s with a Don Rickles special up into the 2000s with George Lopez and Jeff Dunham. Did some episodes of Flight of the Conchords, which, don't worry, that gets his cred back up a little bit in my book. But all over the place. But like you said, a lot of MTV Movie Awards, Academy Awards, all the way up to as recently as 2014. So, like you said, that's probably got to play a little bit of a factor here. But admittedly, an extremely varied career that has gone to a lot of different places. So, good for you, Troy.
Well, with all that being said, Andrew, I think it's time we jump into this movie, talk about all the high points and positives of the 1998 film, not to be confused with the 1997 horror film, Jack Frost. Musician Jack Frost has it all. A beautiful wife, a smart son, and rising success with the Jack Frost Band. When he realizes that his work is costing him too much time with his family, he leaves the most important gig of their career to spend Christmas Day at the family cabin. On his way, however, Jack is killed in a car crash during a snowstorm. 1 year later, Charlie builds a snowman, and to his surprise, the snowman comes to life with the spirit and voice of his father. Now Jack has one last chance to prove to his son that he is the number one priority in his life. But their time is limited as the heat is rising. Snowman gonna melt, Andrew. What a premise we have here. What fun. We talk about, like Christmas magic. That's all over there. We got a snowman coming to life. It's interesting because it's called Jack Frost, but as you mentioned, it's not the character of Jack Frost. And then it's got a snowman coming to life, but this is not a modern day Frosty the Snowman. It's a completely different tale. So it's kind of just, taking bits and pieces from here and there about traditional Christmas and winter stories and kind of doing its own thing with it,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we're no stranger to, your classic, I don't know, it's the nice way of saying it, boilerplate Christmas family specials. Yeah, we've got ourselves a heck of a premise here. It is interesting reading about this movie. Just, I don't want to talk about it too much while we're in the thick of it, but just the idea that at one point this was going to star George Clooney and be directed by Sam Raimi. What a different movie that would have been.
Totally. I mean, I mentioned just before the jump there that there was a movie that came out in 1997 called Jack Frost, but it's a horror movie, straight to video, I believe, about a killer snowman. And both of those movies had to be in production at the same time. So you got to imagine, during the production of this movie, they were probably not happy about the fact that this other movie's beating him to the market with the same name, similar premise in that it's a living snowman, but a horror movie. All that being said, if this movie was directed by Sam Raimi, there would probably be some terrifying shots, whether he meant to or not. But you got to imagine the snowman coming to life would be a pretty intense sequence, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's always wild to think about that. I think back, if you listen to our Doctor Strange episode, we talked about him, but the Raimi-isms that he has, that he kind of, even in stuff that's not horror, he still kind of puts it in. And that would have been such a strange thing to see in, like, and don't get me wrong, I know he's done, like, quote unquote,
for love of the game
movies, for the love of the game, for other stuff. Like, he's done movies that are like that are just kind of standard human dramas, and even then he's still got his Raimi-isms at work. But yeah, that, not to be, and not to say that would have not had its own potential merits, but I'm glad the movie we got is the movie we got.
I agree, definitely. And reading about that previous version, it seemed to have, production was underway, so much so that the snowman they designed is apparently, from what I've read from multiple sources, based on George Clooney. But it just looks like a snowman to me, and I don't. Maybe if I'm trying to look for it, like the snowman kind of has like squinty eyes, like the sides of his eyes get a little squinty as it makes faces. But I guess George Clooney kind of does that. But I feel like I'm just reaching to try to make sense of what these sources are telling me,
Yeah, I don't know. Like you said, you look at the snowman and, like, I don't know if my brain's just filling in the gap and being like, yeah, sure, it looks like George Clooney, in as much as an anthropomorphic snowman looks like George Clooney. And well, also, like, you couldn't just, like, redesign the snowman's face. Like, it's that difficult to do that. Like, you can't just redo it slightly just to make it not George Clooney. But I don't know how true that is. But anyway, we're so far off the point, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, let's move ahead here. We're gonna talk about this movie and all of our favorite scenes and the best parts of it and all that good stuff. But firstly, we're going to talk about this cast, starting with the high point, with the best casting, the best performance of the film. Every episode, we recognize one person who goes above and beyond the call of duty, that they actually elevate the quality of the entire film with their performance. We recognize that person by giving them the Mark Strong Award. Andrew, go ahead and kick us off here. Who is getting your Mark Strong Award for Jack Frost?
I have decided to go with, and I will say this, there's a lot of really good performances here. There are definitely
Andrew, come on, we know where you're going. Come on,
it's Michael Keaton, folks. There's no question. There's no stopping it. There's dread it, run from it. Keaton arrives all the same. You can't get away from it. Yeah, I love Michael Keaton. I could consider it a deep. I grapple with the fact that he wasn't the Mark Strong for Batman Returns. It's something that I have to live with.
Sometimes you wake up at 3 a.m. in a sweat, wondering if you made the right choice.
But I choose to live with that pain. I did that to myself. But here now, I have a moment to write history and correct my the gaping hole in my life. But anyway, no, I am definitely going with Michael Keaton as our titular Jack Frost. I think when talking about elevating a film, making a film work, I think Keaton is embodying that here, even when he kind of switches to being just like a voice role. I think he's doing, those scenes where he's alive, like, he really makes that family dynamic believable. Like, you believe that this is a family, you believe that this is a family that all loves each other, and they are, a very tight-knit group. There is a lot of authenticity that comes through, and that's in no short part due to his performance. So, yes, I have to go straight to the top. Michael Keaton as Jack Frost, Mark Strong with a bullet.
Excellent pick, Andrew. Can't say I'm surprised. I mean, it's Michael Keaton. I knew you'd go there. But yeah, picking up his first Mark Strong award, well deserved, of course, because he is, at the end of the day, the greatest actor of all time. So, of course,
Yeah,
very
of all
worthy
time.
of the award. And even though majority of this movie, it is a voice performance, I mean, it's the voice of Michael Keaton. It's one of his best tools, as an actor. His voice and his cadence and his wit, it all comes through, even when it is just a voice performance.
Yep.
And I'm just realizing during this conversation that they went from George Clooney to Michael Keaton. Two people that have played Batman to make their snowman. It'd be funny if Val Kilmer was the original one and they designed the snowman on Val Kilmer and it had like the Val Kilmer lips, which are so distinct on that snowman. Like there'd be no getting around that.
There would absolutely not be. So yeah, they were like, fine, George Clooney doesn't want to be in our movie. We'll get the better Batman. It's like, fine, we'll take this personally. But I can't run from it. Michael Keaton's definitely a huge part of why this movie works for me so much. So gotta go with the man himself.
It's a great pick, Andrew. And even though I'm agreeing with everything they're saying here, how great the performance is, and I agree they are worthy of getting a Mark Strong award, it's not who I'm giving my Mark Strong award to. Instead, I'm going to go a different direction because at the core of this movie, the heart of this movie, what makes it work is the father-son relationship. It's what the plot is based around, it's the driving force, and it's just so important. But you've got two actors there, you've got two players there to make it work so well. And I'm going to go with the other counterpart in that relationship. I'm going to give my Mark Strong award to Joseph Cross as Charlie Frost, Jack's son. And I'm doing this because Michael Keaton's Michael Keaton. He's great. Of course he's great. He's always awesome. But without... Man, we've talked about child actors a number of times on this show. Like we typically kind of grade them on a curve and give them some leeway. And there's some child actors that have prominent roles in movies that, at the end of the day, they're just not great actors. It is what it is. But that is not true of Joseph Cross. He is doing an excellent job hanging with Michael Keaton, being witty, going back and forth. And most importantly, like you were saying, you buy that relationship, that father-son dynamic. And one reason I love their father-son dynamic so much is, admittedly, it reminded me a bit of me and my dad, specifically with the way that Charlie emulates his dad's sense of humor. Because, the dad is Michael Keaton. He's very sarcastic in a very dry way, as Michael Keaton is known for. And Charlie's son, really, hangs with him. Like, there's some dialogue early in the movie that I really like where his dad, Jack, mentions the little toothpicks, like, you find in sandwiches. And then Charlie's like, oh, yeah, like, Mom puts in the olives of my martinis. And Dad's like, oh, you're drinking martinis now? He's like, yeah, 2. She backs 2 on my lunch. I'm up to 2 a day. And they just have this very, they're not laughing at things. It's just very, dry, witty banter back and forth.
Yeah.
And it's, again, it's very similar to, my dad's sense of humor and what I've always tried to emulate. And as you grow up, you've got to learn, when to use it and when it's funny and when you just sound like a jerk, right? So,
of course.
you can see him, emulating his dad. And that's just really special to me, and you don't always get that in movies. A lot of times it's just like, okay, yeah, you're telling me that's the dad, you're telling me that's the kid, okay, great, that's the roles they're playing. But I buy it so much, and I've got to recognize the other half of that relationship by giving the Mark Strong award to Joseph Cross.
No, I agree. Like you said, this is it's a family dynamic, and there's a lot of pieces to making that work. But like you said, the core of this is the Charlie Jack relationship, and a lesser child actor might not have pulled that off. There's, like you said, there's plenty of instances of child actors who, and I'm not, look, guys, they're kids. Go easy. Don't take it personally. What you guys did to Jake Lloyd was really mean, but in this case, he's up to the task, and he's a little bit older than your kind of standard child actors. He's probably in his early teens or teens at this point. But like I said, he's up to the task. He's hanging with Michael Keaton. The banter feels authentic. It doesn't feel forced. Like you mentioned that conversation where they talk about the martinis. That's part of kind of a longer scene, and it works. It feels real. It feels genuine. It feels like a father and son hanging out. And yeah, like you said, he's up to the task, and it could have gone very wrong, but it doesn't. And that deserves some huge props to Joseph Cross for that. Joseph Cross still out there, which I think is very cool. Recently directed a film a few years ago called Summer Night, and is still acting occasionally in films. So good for him.
Yeah, successfully made that transition, which is notoriously a difficult thing to do. But some of the more prominent roles in recent years would be the HBO series Big Little Lies, and the greatest Netflix show of all time, Mindhunter, has a recurring role there as well. So, like you said, still out there doing the thing. Successful transition into a big boy actor from a child actor.
Was also recently in David Fincher's Mank as well, the film about Herman J. Mankiewicz, who wrote Citizen Kane. So even getting that prestige David Fincher and even Paul Thomas Anderson cred here lately. So yeah, good stuff.
Continuing through the cast here, let's first round out the family, because we have Kelly Preston playing Gabby Frost, Jack's wife and Charlie's mom, obviously. And like many real-life families, she's the mom, and she's really the glue of the family. And her relationship and dynamics with Jack Frost are really well explored, I think. And then her relationship with Charlie as well, helping Charlie through the grieving process and dealing with the loss of his dad and stuff. And she's got some scenes where she really gets to dig in and shine in that regard. But holding it together, staying strong, and like I said, the glue of the family. Of course, got to give a big RAP out to Kelly Preston, who passed away a couple years ago in 2020. And honestly, no disrespect, but like I had forgotten that she passed away. She was too young to be passing away of breast cancer, and her battle with cancer, from what I understand, was very private. I don't think it was really widely known until she actually passed away. And there was a lot. There's a lot going on in 2020. A lot of stuff making the news.
A few things,
and,
yeah.
Like I said, it just wasn't really prominent in my mind as I'm rewatching this movie. But I was watching most of it with friend of the show, my wife, who pointed out something about Kelly Preston. Used to be John Travolta's wife, and I was like, "Oh, did they separate?" I didn't hear anything about that. She's like, "She's dead." I was like, "Oh, wow, yeah." I
oh no,
forgot. But like I said, very tragic, too young, but excellent in this movie, I think, as our mom.
Yeah. Also, ironically enough, in For the Love of the Game, but Kelly Preston. Like I said, it happened kind of, we were still knee deep in COVID. And so I think it's just one of those things that kind of flew under the radar there for a lot of people. But yeah, like you said, you talk about the family dynamic, and she's kind of the third piece of that. She does kind of sit out a lot of the snowman action. But that's kind of by design. It's like I said, the story is about Charlie and Jack. And so she's got kind of just the concerned mom role for the latter half of it, but she plays a really important part in not just selling that family dynamic, but also, like you said, some of those scenes with Charlie that she has are really powerful and very effective. And she feels like, an invested mom who's worried about her kid. But also the chemistry she has with not just Charlie, but also Michael Keaton. Like, you believe that this is a married couple that loves each other and that they are way into each other. And like I said, it firms that dynamic, because again, anything lesser than what we got would definitely start to shake it apart. And so definitely big props to Kelly Preston for writing an admittedly not the easiest of lines.
Next, we have Mark Addy playing the character MacArthur, who is Jack's best friend, and he's a member of the band. And after Jack passes away, he helps just kind of look after the family, babysitting for Charlie when Gabby has things that she has to do, and just generally looking out for him and make sure that they're doing okay. It's a pretty sweet role. I really like Mark Addy. It's just a great. You've seen him as a supporting character in probably multiple movies. And he's always just such a kind, gentle presence. It's just really nice. So perfect for this kind of role. Broke onto the scene just the year before this with the Full Monty, very highly critically praised role in his performance specifically. I did not know this, but looking at this filmography a couple years after this, stars as Fred Flintstone in the Flintstones and Viva Rock Vegas, taking over the role from John Goodman. And I kind of got to see that. I got to see what this Fred Flintstone voice is like. I haven't watched that one yet, but that is interesting. But in 2001, in A Knight's Tale, probably other than Jack Frost, the thing I most associate him with, though.
Yeah, definitely for me. A Knight's Tale is definitely kind of the number one thing for me that I definitely remember him for. I remember from a lot of other things, but that's kind of the big one. And then obviously Game of Thrones fans probably know him as I'm not going to say his character's name, Chris, because I'm probably going to get it wrong. But he was on the first season of that, was part of the main cast. I can only assume something awful happens to him based off the fact he's not in more seasons. But I'm not going to go into spoiler territory because truthfully, not sure. But I do love Mark Addy a lot. He has that kind of warm, wholesome kind of energy he brings to this. That kind of doesn't really get towards the paternal really, but really just kind of doing his part to help. And it shows through. He's got some great scenes in here. I'll talk about those a little bit later, but it all works. He's very effective in the role, and I'm never sad to see Mark Addy on my screen.
And that really is our key players. That's the main cast. That's the family dynamic and the driving force of this movie. But I've got to shout out some of these supporting performances because they are bonkers in some cases, but all supremely entertaining. Like Henry Rollins as the character Sid Gronick, who is the hockey coach for Charlie's team. And I mean, it's Henry Rollins, right? Playing a little league, right? Or what do they call, Andrew? What do they call little kids playing hockey? Is it little league? Is it pee wee? What's the official term?
Pee wee hockey. Pee wee hockey. Pee wee hockey coach Henry Rollins, and it's oh man. I guess I'm guessing that's why he's cast in this role, because he's like very aggressive as a hockey coach in a very comedic way, and Henry Rollins is a very intense human being, and it's just funny to me, like looking at his acting credits. Like he's been an actor for a very long time, and some of the things I know him from. A lot of voice acting roles. He plays a villain in Batman Beyond, and a villain that like wants to tear down the system. Man, that's Mad like Stan. His whole thing. Yeah, exactly. And of course, that makes sense for Henry Rollins. That's what he sang about most of his career. Or he's in Avatar: The Last Airbender as a villain. Very much the same thing. Wants to dismantle the system and the controlling powers that be. That makes a lot of sense. You get Henry Rollins for that. But this, it's just like we need someone who's intense, who can be angry. Sure, Henry Rollins. But in addition to the angry coach thing, the other running gag in this movie is that he's one of the few people to see Jack Frost come to life as a snowman, see him wandering around the city, and he is terrified of snowmen because of that. And no one believes him, and he seems paranoid because he saw a snowman move. And he's, he doesn't want people saying the word snowman around him. And he's like looking over his shoulder at the snowman to see what's going to move again. It's just such a wacky thing to see Henry Rollins do. But I love that he's in this movie. Yeah, it's. I've forgotten that he was the hockey coach. I think maybe he showed up in the credits, and I was like, wait, what? And then it like all came back. But yeah, his performance in this is very, very effective. It's very funny. I love that he's so angry, but then like his son keeps him in check, and he's just like, all right, sorry. Like it comes back to earth. Like he's got no issue. Like he's super intense, but then just comes right back down to earth and he's fine. But then like you said, he's sitting in the car and he's like, "Son, I said there'd be no mention of snowmen in this car." Like he's got this increasing paranoia at snowmen. It's very, very funny. I do love this though. I was looking at his filmography, and like you said, there's a lot of stuff in there where he is doing voices. He's got a lot of television stuff, movies, but he's got 3 movies in a row in 95, 97, and 98. He's in Heat in 1995. One of the greatest films of all time, directed by Michael Mann. In 97, the next movie he's in is Lost Highway, a David Lynch film about, depending on who you listen to, Bill Pullman suffering a dissociative episode where he turns into Balthazar Getty. Like you do. And then Jack Frost follows Lost Highway. So it's 3 wildly different films with wildly different directors where he plays... you could, I guess, argue that he's playing shades of the same character in all of them, though, which makes it even kind of funnier because he's still kind of Henry Rollins, but just such a strange run of movies to be in a row, to be in. And it's just very funny to me. But
the range on this man.
Yeah. Don't mess with Henry Rollins, folks. But and then his next movie after Jack Frost, Batman Beyond Return of the Joker. Because, why not? But yeah, Henry Rollins is great in this movie. He's like not in a whole lot, but he's making the most of every single scene.
Got to give a shout out to Taylor Handley, who plays the character Rory Buck. And if you can't tell by that name, they are the school bully in this movie, bullying Charlie and some younger kids, and Charlie's got to stick up for him. But this kid looks like all 4 members of Sum 41 held up their power rings and summoned this character into life. They've got their dyed Liberty spikes and the goggles on their forehead. I would say it's like of the time, but this is 98. This is a little ahead of the time. This is like some early 2000s look and gear he's got on, but beating most people to the punch by a few years.
Maybe Sum 41 stole their entire look from this band's look here. Maybe they're just big fans of Jack Frost, which would be the biggest credit to their favor that I can think of. But yeah, this is but it's a great performance that he gives as Roy Buck. I do like it a lot. He's got an interesting arc in this movie. So, but yeah, definitely worth a shout out there. I do want to mention a few others. These are really just blink and you miss it type cameos. But strangely, 3 of Frank Zappa's children are in this movie. I have no idea why.
Do you think it's a coincidence? Do you think they showed up on set and like, oh, you're here? You're here?
You're in this too? They're just doing the Spider-Man point at each other in like the parking lot where they're all like, you're in this? You're in this. Wow. The 4th child, Diva Zappa, was not included, unfortunately, but Dweezil Zappa plays the music agent doing the classic, holds the phone up to the band playing for his boss so that his boss can hear it, which means the
listen
band
to
like,
this.
Yeah,
it's a little flip phone from the late 90s.
98,
like
folks. They sounded
not
terrible.
Sounding good.
I guess maybe that's why he had to have the gig, but Dweezil Zappa plays that guy. He's only in that one scene, I think. I don't think he shows up again physically in the rest of the movie. Moon Unit Zappa plays the school teacher. Again, she's actually uncredited. Just again, a very brief, literally has like 2 lines of dialogue. And then the one who actually shows up the most, oddly, is Ahmet Zappa, who plays the snowplow driver, who recurs throughout the film. A little important to the plot at times, but always listening to some classic rock song, Free Ride by the Enter Winter Group, Slow Ride by Foghat, something like that. But plays a big part of our final act there, allowing Jack to return to the mountains. So those are all fun.
I'm not surprised that Frank Zappa has kids named Ahmet, Dweezil, and Moon Unit. Because of course he does. But also, like, dude, Your name is Frank. Why are you doing this to your kids? You got to grow up as a Frank, and now they have to grow up as Moon Unit?
Yep. She goes by Moon a lot, but
Oh, yeah, that's
but
much
yeah,
less
it's much
strange.
better.
Thanks.
Um,
You can definitely find that
yeah.
license plate souvenir.
Yeah, absolutely. There's actually, and so I also want to shout out some members of the Jack Frost band, which has got a good number of actual musicians in it. But the music for this film is done by a gentleman named Trevor Rabin, who then also gets to appear as the guitar player in the Jack Frost band. Fans of the band, yes, will know who Trevor Rabin is, as he joined the band in the early 80s, leading up to the release of their album 90215. But if you have heard the song Owner of a Lonely Heart, that is Trevor Rabin playing guitar on that track, and he would stick with Yes for the next decade or so, and then started transitioning into film scores and things of that nature, as seen here. Also in the Jack Frost band is Lily Hayden, and she also apparently plays Lily. Apparently their names in the Jack Frost band are all just their actual names, even though I don't think they ever say them anywhere.
No. No.
But she is also a violinist, and she plays the violinist of the band. And then Lou Molino III is the drummer. Played with a who's who over the course of his career, but again, eagle-eyed Yes fans will remember that he also sat behind the drum kit for a recent offshoot of the band, including Trevor Rabin and Rick Wakeman. So it's just fun. It's a weird pet peeve of mine when there's musicians in movies that don't even pretend to look like they're playing the instruments they're supposedly playing.
Yes.
When it's just not even close. Happens a lot with string players, especially, where they're not even synced up with the music like they basically just tell them to all fake it, and then they sync in the music later. But and possibly it might be that these people played on the actual tracks. It's very possible that they were part of those recording sessions, and that's why they look like they're playing, because they are. Because near as I can tell, Michael Keaton's singing on all those tracks. It certainly sounds like him, so I've got no reason to think otherwise.
I tried to do some Googling, and I couldn't find like a definitive answer. I mean, I saw like some rather weak sources say it is him singing, but yeah, I'm inclined to believe it is, because it does sound like him. And I mean, the guy can sing. It sounds good, right? I'll listen to more of it.
The other one I do want to shout out, as this one just kind of hit me, but Wayne Fetterman plays Dave, the policeman, and he just has one scene where they're kind of reporting that Charlie is missing, and they're trying to explain that he's with a snowman, and he starts asking questions, but he's like, "So the snowman, height, weight?" And they're like, "What?" And he's like, "Look, I got to do my job." And they're like, "I don't know, 5'10", 600 pounds." And he's like, "All right, if you had to guess an age," and like that's just just
good.
Stuff like that. It worked for me. It's like I said, just the one scene. Did not expect Wayne Fetterman to have quite the career that he has, but a lot of voiceover work, a lot of podcasting, different stints on different shows all over time. But just a fun little small performance there that, like I said, when he's finally like, if you could guess an age, I was like, all right, it's pretty good. But also Wikipedia says that Stevie Ray Vaughan appears as himself. Folks,
Even though he's been
that.
dead for a number of years.
He's not playing himself in this movie. He died in 1990. He was my age. Oh no. Avoid helicopters, Andrew. But it's they show a music video for Couldn't Stand the Weather, and that's it. Like he does not appear in this movie as himself. That would be like any movie with a song features that, those musicians in the film, and it's not true, folks. But yeah, just some fun shout outs there. A couple of other people that I did also recognize, but those are all the big players. But I do just want to point out the Jack Frost band songs on the soundtrack are great. They're jams.
They're so good. I looked them up on YouTube Music as a service that I have, and I added them to my library, which I saw both of them were available. So I'm happy to add those to my Christmas rotation, or just rotation in general, because they are good tunes. I'm a bit surprised that Bruce Willis wasn't considered for the lead of this movie. It seems like a very much late 90s Bruce Willis role. The dude loves his blues music. I'm sure he would have been happy to sing, and
That's true.
it would have fit. But you know what? He never played Batman. That must have been a deal breaker.
Yeah, when you have one Batman, I think you definitely want to stick with the lineage. You don't want to switch that up and go to John McClane. He's already been, in Die Hard. He's already got the Christmas cred as far as
There you go. That's it.
54% of the population is concerned. So you don't want to go too hard.
Well, Andrew, I think it's time we jump into the scenes of this movie, specifically the best scenes and our personal favorites. So, in your opinion, when is this movie firing on all cylinders, and what is your favorite scene in Jack Frost?
There's this thing right at the beginning where this giant WB flashes on the screen, and then later at the end, it goes dark and these white words start appearing. My favorite part is in between.
All between that,
but,
yeah, it's good stuff. It's a good time.
It is. It's a good one. I do love that the Warner Brothers logo for this gets the snow on it. I always kind of like when the studios do the fun little funneling, like when Disney did that with like Tron Legacy, when they did like the grid version of the castle and stuff like that. But one
of my favorites is probably Into the Spider-Verse. The Columbia logo flashes through a bunch of different art styles. So cool.
It's fun. It's just a little creativity and fun there. But I really do like the pretty much all the scenes of Charlie and Jack together. And like I said, that's a no small part due to the fact that it's the chemistry they have. But I think the scenes I'm going to go with are really kind of the scenes kind of when they first finally kind of overcome the initial kind of strangeness of his dad being a snowman, but really the hockey scene is what I really like, because it is a payoff, because it's one of the things that at the beginning of the film when he's in his corporeal form, he just an excuse for me to use the word corporeal, folks, but he kind of makes reference of this thing called the J shot and shows it to him, and it's super accurate, and his son's like, "Oh, Dad, you got to teach me," and he's kind of getting pulled to the things. They got to go record a song at the studio, and it leads to him missing the hockey game, and obviously, that's just sad. But now, as the snowman, they're kind of hanging out, and Charlie stopped playing hockey, and they have a fun scene where Charlie is kind of over hockey. He's kind of retreated from a lot of his friends in the aftermath of his dad dying, which, I don't think that's strange or unexpected, but it's he's, and you get the humor again, but because the snowman gets on the ice and he's like, "Fine, I'll be out on the snow all by myself, out here all alone doing my thing," and it kind of goads Charlie into getting back on the ice for the first time in a while, and he shows him how the J shot works, and they conveniently find some very well-shaped branches that look exactly like hockey sticks. Some very conveniently shaped rocks. It's all perfect. I don't know what they built that out of, though.
All over the place up north, from what I understand.
Yeah. The net, though, that's the step too far. Can't buy that.
The most unrealistic part of this movie is making a whole hockey net out of twigs.
It is, folks. Keep it in the real world next time. What an idiot. Yeah. But either way, as this scene gets underway, I like it a lot. Like I said, it's just them kind of bonding over this thing that they kind of used to have. And Charlie, it kind of reawakens Charlie's love of the game as he learns what the J shot is. And we get a fun scene where he learns it, kind of masters it, shoots a bunch of holes in his dad, and gets a chance to really kind of, like I said, bond and kind of rediscover his love of the sport. And so, I got to go with this little sequence here. And it kind of builds to our it kind of leads into our third act, as we kind of get Charlie, like I said, kind of rejoining the hockey team, and Jack trying to find a way to see him play. And it's all working for me.
Andrew, I'm glad you're highlighting this scene. Well, one, because it's great, but two, it's because it's about the J shot. Something that I've wondered about for a very large portion of my life. Because, I mean, you know hockey. You play hockey recreationally up there in Chicago.
I'm on the ice in the pads.
I have never put on a pair of ice skates. I've never been ice skating, much less played any kind of hockey, other than here in Texas, street hockey with some rollerblades and usually a ball and a net you put in the street, much like Wayne's World. But I know nothing about hockey, or very little anyway. But this J shot, like I've always wondered, like, is this like a real shot? Is this a real technique? Is this useful? Is this something you could emulate? And I myself tried to emulate there in the streets, but I didn't know what the hell I was doing. Is this a real thing? Or is this like a Flying V from the Mighty Ducks, where like it kind of looks cool, but makes absolutely no sense in real life?
Okay, excellent. I'm glad you brought this up, Chris, because I don't get a whole lot of chances to talk about hockey on this show. So first off, the Flying V is pointless. It doesn't work. It's not a strategy. The Flying V, anytime it is used successfully, rests on the team you are playing basically not touching you, which is just not how hockey works. In, I believe it's Mighty Ducks 2, they try it against the Iceland team, and I think it happens again in Mighty Ducks 3 when they tried it against the varsity team. They check the shit out of them. Like, they just knock them down to the ice. There's just there's no question. It doesn't work. It's not a thing. You could probably do a variation of it, but really all it is just coming in and just passing the puck around. Turns out when you pass the puck around as a team, it works. But
and
the J shot. Go ahead.
I'm gonna throw a little bit of hockey knowledge I know out there. With today's rules, I don't know how long these rules have been around, but like the way the puck has to be the first one across the blue line, I think. Like once they cross the blue line, you're gonna know where the puck is at, right? Because it can't be in like the rear player and they all cross the line. Am I correct about this?
You are absolutely correct, because that is called offsides in hockey. If there is a player who crosses before the puck let me rephrase that. If a player crosses before the puck and somebody on the other team then touches the puck after them, that's offside. So like if I go over first and then the puck comes in and I get out before anybody on my team touches it, they're not going to call offsides because we're not trying to play the puck. But yes, the Flying V, would have to go back to the front player when they cross the blue line,
defeating the entire purpose of the Flying V.
Right, which is generally used in the movie to create confusion because you don't know who's got the puck and you're passing it back and forth. And guys, it's a cool visual because they're ducks. I get it. It's fun. It's cute. I get it. It's not a thing. But the J shot. Switching gears, it really is just like it's just you basically just bring the puck in slightly and then shoot it. It's not even really a trick shot. It's just kind of a fake out, really, like a little bit, because you're making it seem like you're going to kind of bring it all the way across, like you're going to deke to the other side and then maybe shoot it off your backhand, but like you just shoot it halfway through. So yeah, you could absolutely do the J shot. It would be a thing. Would it be as effective as it is in the movie? That's a different question. But like what he's doing for the J shot it's perfectly acceptable. Like you could do it. It's not a problem. So in that regard, yes, the J shot, real thing. Would it be that effective? Couldn't tell you. But Flying V, nonsense, folks.
Well, that's good to know. I can put that 24-year mystery to rest. So thank you, Andrew. Great pick for favorite scene. I'm going to go with a different one, but I'm picking it for much of the same reasons as you picked this scene, because it involves the relationship between Jack and Charlie. But I'm going to go with the scenes where Jack is still alive, still a human in his mortal form. And I kind of like all of the scenes of them two together before he dies.
Right,
and there's
yeah.
really two key ones. I'm going to highlight both of them as my favorite because I've already talked so much about how great I think their dynamic is and their relationship and their chemistry, but these early scenes are so important because you have to establish a baseline before you lose Jack. You have to understand the relationship they had and how much they love each other and the issues they have about him being around and everything. You got to establish that before you get to the later stuff. Like, if this movie opened and he was already dead, and then comes back as a snowman, like, everything is falling flat because you didn't have these scenes that establish everything. So I think they're doing a lot of work, but they don't feel like it because they're just so fun and it feels so effortless. I mean, you got like that martini conversation earlier. I love the super dad jokes of Michael Keaton. Like whenever he is leaving to go to the recording session and he's in the middle of teaching him the J shot, but he has to go. And so Charlie's like, but Dad. And then Jack Frost is like, but Dad? Did you just call me butt dad? And he just keeps going with it. Like, okay, bye butt son. Bye butt family. Like, such a dad. So fun. No one's laughing, but it's entertaining to the dad and frustrating to everyone else. It's perfect. I love it. And it's just, it all, like I said, it all feels just so natural. It just feels like a father and son. Or like they're building a snowman together. And Charlie is like, okay, now we need the nose. And he's, the dad, he pulls the carrot out and he puts it in the snowman's crotch. And he's like, no, nose. And Jack's like, oh, I thought you said hose. Hilarious. Peak comedy
stuff.
right there. So good. So yeah, I love their dynamic, and the scenes that establish it, I've got to highlight as my favorite scenes of the movie because it's what makes everything else that comes after it work as well as it does.
Very good picks, Chris. I wasn't sure if you were saying more there. Sorry. But no, these are great picks. Like, these are great scenes. I like them a lot. Like you said, all of this stuff works. All of it's very effective. And like you said, it really sells the family dynamic. And like I said, everybody's doing some big heavy lifting here, and it works. It all works. Michael Keaton is the greatest film dad alive. Between this and Mr. Mom, like, don't bet against him, folks. Yeah.
My Life. Have you seen My Life? Where he is. Here's the plot of My Life. He is dying, I believe, cancer, and he spends the movie making films for his kid to watch, so he can still be a dad, even though he knows he's gonna die. Like, oh man,
dude,
greatest dad of all time.
Have you seen My Life? Hearing that, apparently not. My God.
You gotta see that movie. Huge Michael Keaton fan. Yeah, that one's. I mean, it's
I want a spoiler. But does he actually die? I'm
not gonna tell you. You got to see it.
Oh man. It's gonna hurt, Chris. It's gonna hurt. Multiplicity. He learns his lesson in multiplicity, figures it out. Yeah. Do you want me to tell you my fun multiplicity analogy that I've been making for the last couple of months?
Of course, yes.
Yeah. So, as you know, I've been having a lot of teeth work done. In the last couple of months, I've been having a lot of stuff done to get my teeth to a stable place so that I can get some partial dentures to finally fix my teeth. Because, folks, I have a lot of issues with my teeth. I mentioned this in the Discord if you really want more details. But there was a particular tooth that they kept having to do temporary crowns on. And I realized that it was basically a multiplicity situation because the original tooth was gone a long time ago and replaced by a filling. Now, this filling is the greatest filling any dentist has ever seen in the aftermath. Like, any dentist I've seen sees that filling and was like, whoa, that dude did the work. Because, like, apparently it was a filling that he shouldn't have done. It was almost the whole tooth, but he, like, hand molded the filling to look like a tooth. Added primary and secondary tooth anatomy. I don't know what any of this means. They were just all super impressed by it.
Okay.
Anyway, they had to get rid of it, unfortunately. It was a very traumatic experience. They had to drill it out just because the rest of the tooth wasn't holding up. I'd had that filling for like a decade. It did its job. Rest in peace. But what they did before they got rid of it is they molded it to do a temporary crown based off of it to put in its place while I waited for the final crown. And so, but then they had to do it again. And they molded that temporary crown off the previous temporary crown, which was molded off the filling, which was molded off the tooth. And I was doing the math, and I suddenly realized that the last temporary crown they put on there was basically number 4. And it was
You've
it
got
was-
Doug in your mouth now.
basically it was just like with every
No,
subsequent one, like
I'm sorry. Is it Doug or Steve? Doug's is actually a name, right?
no, number 4 is Lenny. But he just calls
he call
Doug
it-
Steve.
That's what it is. Yeah,
He calls Doug Steve the whole time. And I had a friend that kind of pointed this out. You could see that character as problematic these days, but the things that he did say. This is my friend with spina bifida. He was like, they don't make fun of him. They don't call him any unnecessary slurs. So he is treated as respectfully as a character like that can be treated. So I do think that is, worth pointing out. And also it's just very funny. But yeah, by the time I got to the 4th one, like almost all the definition was gone, all the nuance, and it was just like this vacuum of a fake tooth. And I was like, I missed number 2. I don't remember. What was that? Lance or Rico? Forget which one was which.
I don't remember.
But yes, I had I was chuckling to myself a lot when I was making that realization sitting on the couch in my house alone. It's like, nobody will understand this joke. Now Chris does. Beautiful.
Andrew, forgive me. I want to talk about Henry Rollins some more. We talked. He's so funny in this movie, and I just want to kind of clarify something. I mean, people listening that have seen the movie understand what I'm about to say, probably. But like we mentioned, he's a very intense, screaming, yelling, pee-wee hockey coach. But there's a version of that is not funny. I mean, there are like abusive coaches and stuff. But the key is that the kids don't take him seriously. Like the joke is that he is way too serious. And I love like the speech that he's giving as they play their arch rival, which they establish that they have an arch rival team in this movie. But he ends his speech with screaming, "Now go out there and wipe the floor with their filthy butts. Play clean, have a good time." Right? The joke is that he's way too into it, and the kids are like rolling their eyes. Like you said, his son on the team is like, "Dad, chill out," right? And he's made to look a goofball in every scene that is in, whether he's scared of the snowman or overly intense hockey coach. And Henry Rollins is very good at that.
He's very, very good at this. Like you said, the gag is that they know it's kind of toothless. They know that he's like intense and it's a big deal, but like, they know that there's not really anything behind it. It reminds me, there's a speech in there's a football movie called Necessary Roughness. Scott Bakula plays an aged quarterback that comes back to college to play football after the whole team gets thrown out of school for accepting boosters and taking drugs, which is how you know it's fiction, because it's about a college football team in Texas that actually faces consequences. But there's a speech where they're in like their final game, and the one thing I do like about that movie is that it's not some underdog team that makes the playoffs. They tie one of their last games, and the announcer's like, "What an amazing upset!" When they tie, and it leads to their last game, which is against like the undefeated team, and they just beat them in their last game, and that's all it is. But in the halftime of that game, the coach gives them a speech, and I won't repeat it word for word because there are some deep expletives that I don't want to keep going back to. But he's like, "You're going to go out there, you're going to tear off their friggin' heads and crap down their necks. Let us pray." And then they're all so freaked out, they immediately kneel down and just go on with it. But yeah, similar energy here where it's like, okay. But yeah, all the Henry Rollins stuff in this movie really does work. The scene where he like freaks out just seeing Michael Keaton is Oscar worthy. Maybe not Oscar worthy, Golden Globe worthy. But yeah, it's very funny. He's very, very funny. I do want to call out the scene I mentioned about Mark Addy earlier. There's a scene where he kind of takes Charlie out and they're kind of hanging out. And he gets into this speech about what music was like when he played with his dad versus what it was like after playing with his dad. And he says that Jack always said music shouldn't feel like work. It shouldn't. And, when he says he was playing with his dad, it never felt like work. He was playing music with his friend. Like, what more could you ask for? But after he passed, he's like, suddenly everything was work. Suddenly playing music was just difficult. And that's why he stopped. And he kind of I think he works at like a hardware store now. I always find it interesting in these movies when people support themselves and have these lavish houses off of jobs wouldn't allow for that. Like,
I mean,
Charlie's
definitely
mom is
not
like
today. Yeah,
I
90s
mean,
are a
I don't
different
know.
time.
Yeah, I don't know how well a bank teller did in '98. Although I guess maybe you get some life insurance when Jack passes, but I know a musician don't pay. So, anyway, I do really like this speech because it kind of touches on. It goes outside the family to kind of show the kind of web that grief can be and how it interweaves with different people. Because you immediately assume that his family is going to be deeply impacted by it, and that's a correct assumption. But you forget that there was all these other people that he kind of was a part of their lives and how that affects all of them. And so it's just, again, we're showing that kind of just warped side of Mark Addy's character here, MacArthur, as he's kind of trying to empathize with Charlie a little bit, but also just trying to give him an understanding of just like what he's going through. And I like it. I like it a lot. And Mark Addy delivers it very well.
I agree. And this, I don't want to go too hard. Like, the movie focuses on grief and how it affects people. It's there. I don't want to make it sound like this is some like deep drama or study about the loss of a father. I mean, it's a family film at the end of the day, a Christmas movie, and keeps things mostly lighthearted, but it's got its moments, it's got its scenes, and it's not afraid to kind of address some of that stuff. Like the scene you're talking about, the finale of this movie, which you mentioned earlier, makes you ugly cry every time you watch it. And same. This movie's made me cry a number of times over the years. It's not always the same thing that gets me every time I watch it, but yeah, it hits hard. This most recent watch, and to be clear, I cry in movies a lot. I've always been that way, but God, there's this scene that it's so raw and so good, and it's a year after his dad passed away, and Charlie's in the driveway and he's trying to shovel the snow, clear the path of the driveway before his mom gets home, and then the snowplow comes by, driven by Frank Zappa's son, and it pushes a bunch of fresh snow at the front of the driveway, and Charlie gets frustrated and he's like, damn it, and he starts shoveling and really getting frustrated as he shovels the snow, and he looks at the shovel and it's got a Jack Frost band sticker stuck to it, and he gets more angry and he's shoveling and getting frustrated. And then Gabby, his mom, pulls up and she's like, oh, it's fine, I can go, I can drive through. And he's like, no, I got it. He's determined just to shovel the snow, and he's getting angrier, more frustrated, and he has tears welling in his eyes. And it's clear, and he's not mad at the snow. Right, it's clear what's going on here, and even if you can't relate directly to what he's going through as far as losing a dad, you can probably relate to channeling your grief or sadness into something that you're not actually mad at, but you're gonna be mad at it because that's a place to have an outlet, and it's done so well by our Mark Strong Award winner. And then Gabby getting out, and she recognizes what's going on, and she gives him a hug and says it's okay, I miss him too. I cried watching it. I'm crying a bit now, like talking about the scene and thinking about it, but it's so well done, and it's not the kind of thing you expect in a movie about a talking snowman that's just meant to be silly. And it is, and it has those moments, and we can talk about them, but like that scene, it crushes me.
Oh yeah, it's a good one. And it comes so unexpectedly, I think. Like, you kind of expect these scenes to happen, but this one really kind of comes like out of nowhere in a lot of ways, and it kind of blindsides you. And it's it's rough. There's a lot of scenes in this movie that hit. We did mention the finale. Might as well talk about that now, I guess. But this one is the finale,
I'm already
honestly,
crying. Let's talk about it now.
Yeah, let's just get it, let it out, man. Just let it out. No, this is honestly the reason I probably don't watch this movie more, is simply because of how sad this finale makes me. Like, I genuinely, I was watching this on my computer, like while I was typing notes, and this scene happened, and I was like, Oh God. Uh, uh, and just full on ugly crying, like genuinely. It was terrible. I'm just like, nobody's around, right? This is awful. Like if Liz had seen me, she would have assumed someone had died. I'm fairly certain. Like she would like I cry during movies, but like this one is bad. And like, you know, Superman the movie makes me cry now, but like distant family stuff. You know, you talk about how your relationship with movies changes over time, and that probably is part of it. Like distant family stuff always hits me, so the idea of, you know, somebody having to say goodbye to their family, that definitely is something that's going to hit me more now than it probably would have 5 years ago. But the end of this movie has always kind of just wrecked me, just because it's sad. I mean, like, it's a good ending to the film, and it's the way it has to end, but it's sad. But so basically, as we get to kind of this kind of conclusion, they go up to the mountains. Charlie thinks he saved the day, because now his dad can just hang out at the cabin, just stay up here where it's cold all the time, and he's all good to go. And but Jack knows that's not how it works. We don't really dive into what's exactly happening here or what's going on or all of that. And I'm not saying the movies needed to. In fact, I think that would have actually been like deeply unnecessary for the story that it was telling. It's not what it's about. But Jack knows that it's coming to an end. Whatever is happening, whatever is going on, is reached the end of has run its course. And so we kind of get our kind of genuine farewell. And hold on, I'm getting there.
Do you need me to jump in? Are you okay? You got it?
Yeah, hold on. No, I got it. Chris, I could do it. I've got it. It's fine. So we kind of get our final farewell. At this point, they've gone to the cabin. Jack has called Gabby, and she's kind of realized now that Charlie's not crazy, that Jack is seemingly somehow the snowman. And we get to our final farewell, where Jack kind of returns now he switches into an ethereal form, moving from the mortal / corporeal to now the ethereal. That's how you stop the feelings, Andrew. Say the word ethereal. But and it kind of gives them a chance to all exit on their own terms. Jack knows this is coming to an end. Charlie initially has the resistance. Like, you know, obviously he's like, no, I fixed it. We're here. We're okay. And Jack's like, I can't stay here as a snowman forever. And Gabby gets to kind of a moment to say her goodbye, because we touched on it before. This movie does kind of sideline Kelly Preston's character. Sideline's not the right word. She's still a major part of the film, but the Jack-Charlie relationship is the focus, because that's what's unfinished. That's the thing that Jack never got to make right. But there's a scene where Jack lets Charlie down by not being at his game, and him and his wife kind of have a blow up where she's like, I chose this. I know you're a musician. I know that you're in and out. I know that this is what it is, but he didn't. And that makes it more Charlie's story than Gabby's story. And so they still bring her in at the end. She gets her chance to kind of bid farewell. She asks Jack to do something, Chris. Why don't you talk about that for a second?
She does. What is so effective about this final scene. You would think it would be like Charlie screaming like, "No, Dad, don't leave,"
go,
and dramatic.
yeah.
But it's not. What's so sad about it is that everyone's at peace and everyone accepts it. And that is like what makes you cry, because like Jack is like, no, you've got to live your own life. You know, you can't kind of have your dad still alive, but he's a snowman in the mountains that you visit every now and then. That you're not going to move on from anything and have a normal life. So like, I've got to go. Like he fixed what he was there to fix, and he's got to move on. And Charlie resists at first a little bit, but then he realizes what his dad is telling him, and he lets go. And then Gabby comes up and she says goodbye. She almost immediately accepts it, although she does ask Jack to sing their song, and he does. and everybody starts crying all over again. But
Ah.
then they just immediately say goodbye after that. She doesn't plead for him to stay or anything. She's just happy
No.
that she got to see her husband one more time. And it's just beautiful all around. Even though all the characters in the movie are happy, you, the audience, is crying your eyes out because it's just so sad, so touching. It's so well done. I really can't emphasize enough how well done this movie is. And it's so funny talking about a 19% on Rotten Tomatoes bomb at the box office movie about an animated snowman, but God, I really do love this movie and
Easy
genuinely
there.
think it's very
That's
good.
Jim Henson puppeted Snowman.
That is
or Jim
true.
Henson
I do.
Creature Shop puppeted Snowman.
Creme de la
Jim Henson
creme,
was-
snowman.
I
But
think Jim Henson was dead by this point. But yeah,
you know what? We say
go
on the show
ahead.
all the time that we're not trying to convince you that these poorly received movies are actually masterpieces, but this one's pretty good. And like normally I don't care if you guys listening decide to watch a movie because we did you heard us talk about it and it sounded good. If you decide to do that, that's great, but that's not like my goal. Jack Frost, if you haven't seen this and you're listening, I hope you seek it out. I hope you see this for yourself, and I hope you enjoy it. I hope you cry because it's so good.
No, I agree. The ending is extremely effective. Like I said, but that rests on believing this family dynamic. And like I said, props to Michael Keaton, props to Joseph Cross, and props to Kelly Preston for making it so believable. Like I said, I think with a lesser performance, it would have, or a lesser chemistry, a lesser group, it would not have come through. If I ever meet Michael Keaton, I should have him sign a Jack Frost poster and just see what he says. Just see how he reacts to that. This makes me cry every time. Yeah, it made a lot of us cry at the time. No, not badly. But no, this ending is
Sing our song, Michael Keaton.
Yeah, sing me the song, Michael Keaton. Yeah, I can't say enough good things about it. It is really good. There's a couple, there's other things we could talk about, other scenes, other moments, but the movie's just so chock full of them. You should seek it out.
Interesting. One thing we haven't talked much about. I mean, we're talking about our favorite scenes are the father-son dynamic and the emotional stuff. But like, if you asked me 20 years ago what my favorite scene was, it's probably like when the snowman snowboards down the mountain and beats up the bully for Charlie or whatever. It's all the silly hijinks that we've hardly touched on, and I still enjoy that stuff. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
Like the movie's silly at times, and I very much enjoy it. I love. Michael Keaton comes back as a snowman, and he kind of talks to himself for a good 15 minutes as he's getting acclimated and walking around the town, and makes plenty of jokes. Andrew, I have one of my notes here. The line, I'll read you my note. It says, "Feels for penis." Gasp. No.
Yes.
He checks his anatomy and goes, no.
No.
It's not the most original joke, but it works for me. All the puns are dumb and fun. Like what he used in the opening, he slides down a hill in the snow and goes, "Oh, my balls are freezing." When he finally gets back into the mountains, they know what they're doing there, but it's silly, but I'm having fun with it still. It works for me. It might not be my favorite scenes, like the family stuff, but
yeah,
it's all good. So it makes it a family film, My kids are definitely loving the sillier moments here.
I blame my mom for me crying at movies so much because she does too. Yeah. Yeah, folks, this movie's great. Watch it. Enjoy.
It is.
Love it.
Before we get out of here, Andrew, I've got to highlight the best line of the movie. It is actually said by our bully, Rory Buck, the great bully name, who, by the way, has like a Slim Jim in his mouth throughout most of the movie, like a cigar, which is pretty silly, but pretty fun. But he's our bully, and it's been established in the movie that he never had a dad. We don't know what happened to him, but he grew up without a dad. And the climax in the movie, he gets Charlie 101. He sees him. He's like, "You and me, let's finish this." But Charlie's busy trying to get Jack up to the mountains because he's melting. And then Jack, as the snowman, just starts talking to Rory. He just reveals that he's a living snowman. And Rory's kind of freaked out And Charlie's like, yeah, that's my dad. I'm trying to get him, up to the mountains. And Rory comes around and he delivers Andrew the best line in cinema. He goes, "Snow dad's better than no dad." And he helps him get him into the truck so he can go up the mountains, Andrew. Snow dad's better than no dad. You know that our writers, whoever wrote it, I'm just going to go ahead and give the credit to Mark Steven Johnson. Like he typed that out, or he probably wrote it like in a journal with a quill pen as he's scripting this movie. He writes that, and he sits back in his chair and crosses his arms and nods, and he's like, yeah, that's the line. This is the one I'm going to be remembered for.
Oh my God. Yes, that's by candlelight while the snow fell outside. The greatest of all lines. Man, fantastic. But yeah, this line is great. I do really like this scene because it gives us a classic hallmark of 90s cinema. Anytime there is a bully featured and the friendship takes a turn towards friendship.
The Rocky V special, yeah.
Yeah, the Rocky V special, where how do you know they're friends now? Because at the end of the movie, they're playing hockey together. And that, friends, is the true sign of friendship.
Andrew, I've said it already this month. I'm going to say it again, and we'll probably say it again on the next episode as well. But I love Christmas. I love this time of year. I love these movies. I'm so glad we get to talk about Jack Frost of all things. It's one of those kind of surreal moments of the podcast where, like, this is the movie I grew up watching. I loved. I didn't know anyone else who liked this movie, but it's got like a special personal place in my heart. And now, 24 years later, I'm making a podcast episode about it. It's kind of bizarre, but fun. I'm glad to be in a place where I can do that.
Yeah, Chris, as I've said before, time is a flat circle. I have nothing more to add. I agree. This is a movie that I've always liked. Just getting to talk about some of these movies that we've gotten to talk about has been, it's been a real privilege. Not just the Christmas movies, but in general. But yeah, something like Jack Frost, getting to kind of come back around and make that a hopefully not too desperate plea that everyone seeks this out and we turn around the reception and we turn this into the underrated Christmas classic it deserves to be. But until then, I'm glad we're here.
I'm glad we're here. And now it's, of course, time for our question of the week. If you want to leave us a question for a future episode, you can do so. Hop into our Discord. There's a link right there in the show notes if you haven't joined us already. If you prefer, you can also send us an email, bestoftherestpod@gmail.com. But we've got a few topical questions in our channel, so make sure we get to those this month because they're kind of related to the season here. Like this question from Oculus Neko, who asks, "What's the Christmas movie most likely to melt the heart of a Scrooge or Grinch?" Great question, Neko. So, we love Christmas movies, right? But what's like undeniable? What's really gonna melt the heart of even the Christmas movie haters out there?
Haters, oh man. My gut instinct, and this feels like cheating because it's a version of A Christmas Carol, but I really like Scrooged by, I think Richard Donner directs that, starring Bill Murray, as kind of a weird, not weird, but just a modern take on A Christmas Carol where Scrooged is this kind of cynical film exec or television executive who kind of just sees Christmas as this commercial thing to make money with and realizes that just maybe that's not the way to be. Realizes that he's got his family that was there for him, even if he kind of abandoned them. And the ending speech he makes, I think, is very effective at kind of cutting to the core of what I think Christmas is. And it feels like a cheat because that's a version of A Christmas Carol. It's the whole point. It's called Scrooged. Getting that out of the way before you slam me for it. But but yeah, that's my gut instinct. I don't know. That's the one that immediately comes to mind.
I mean, yeah, that's a good pick because, like I said, there are people out there that just straight up don't like watching Christmas movies. Not even for like because they don't celebrate Christmas, but they're just they don't get into the spirit like some people do, and they don't want to be reminded of it. So I think it's a good pick because you got Bill Murray. Like it's a Bill Murray comedy. Like it's a Christmas movie. It's got the message and everything, but it's kind of accessible by just enjoying that humor and that performance. So I think it's a pretty good pick there, Andrew. I'm going to cheat a little bit as well because the first thing that comes to mind for me is How the Grinch Stole Christmas, like the animated classic. It's nice and short. I think it's like sub 30 minutes, but it is a timeless tale, and it's literally like about the spirit of Christmas and what makes it great. It's so pure in its message, and the animation is wonderful. Like it's low budget. It's not great from a technical standpoint, but it's directed by Chuck Jones, who's just a master of getting the most out of every frame, with character movements and the animation style. And it's so well done. The song's iconic. There's not much I can say right now that hasn't already been said about How the Grinch Stole Christmas, but I don't know how you could not enjoy watching that. As for something that's made me a little less of a cheat here, a recent Christmas staple that comes to mind for me is a movie called Claus on Netflix. I think it's exclusive to Netflix, but came out a few years ago, 2019, I think off the top of my head, but it is a wonderful Christmas movie. It's also animated, and it's animated in a style that I have never seen before. It is traditionally animated in a sense, but again, I read some interviews with the director because I kind of got obsessed with like the look of this movie after I saw it, and he said his goal was to make a movie that's traditionally animated in a style that had traditional animation not gone to the wayside for CGI. How he thinks it would have progressed by this point in 2019. His goal was to make it not look like stickers on a painted background, which is kind of what traditional animation looks like. The characters that move are a little bit brighter than the background. So the lighting is just beautiful and incredible. Like, you got to see it for yourself. It's just so good. But beyond just the style and look and animation, the story itself is wonderful. It is a Santa Claus origin story, but it's not telling like quote unquote the origin of Santa. It's an original story, kind of an alternate version of events, if you will. But that's kind of it. That's kind of all I want to praise as far as like the story. I don't want to spoil anything else for you. Just go see it. It's on Netflix. You have Netflix. If you haven't seen it already, you got to watch this movie. It's going to melt the heart of anyone. Yeah, you might tear up. You might cry. It's got some of those moments, but
Chris.
It's just a perfect movie. It's so good.
No, I've actually not seen this, so I actually do want to check it out. I do like my my Santa Claus origin stories in all shapes and forms. I do have a soft spot for Santa Claus the movie, which was an 80s romp starring David Huddleston as Santa Claus. Some may remember him from Blazing Saddles, or as the titular Big Lebowski in The Big Lebowski. But he plays that's a very strange movie where like there's Santa Claus's origin, and like they're hashing out all of the hallmarks of Santa Claus, but Dudley Moore plays his lead elf that like halfway through the film leaves and gets in with this 80s greedy executive played by John Lithgow, and it's delightfully eccentric and very strange. It's the kind of movie where you're like, so this is a movie about cocaine, right? Because there's no way a normal person came up with this story. But I do like that a lot. It's not, it's a very strange movie. I love Grant Morrison's Claus comic that he did. Believe it or not, there is a Grant Morrison Santa Claus origin comic called Claus, where it's basically like kind of Santa Claus by the way of like, I don't, Conan's not the right comparison, but just like, weird Norwegian, Scandinavian adventure Santa Claus stories, a Viking almost in a way, drawn very well by Dan Mora, who's doing World's Finest now with Mark Waid. But yeah, I'd not heard about this, so I actually looked it up just while you're sitting here, and yeah, the look alone looks like it's worth given a look for. So I'm probably going to give that one a watch and cry a lot.
Hopefully you can watch it before our month is up and come back on the podcast, let people know what you thought about it. And I want to know what movies you like this time of year, and what movies in particular do you think would melt the heart of any cold-hearted Scrooge or Grinch? Let us know in that Discord, email, social media, whatever's convenient for you. You can bet we are going to read it. And until next time, just remember that maybe not every movie is great,
but all movies have greatness.
Thank you to Mark Benavides for singing our theme song. Check him out on Instagram at NotThatMarkAnthony. And thanks to Mitch for the music. Check him out on Twitter at I'm a Biggie Boy, and check our show notes for a SoundCloud link. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend. It's the only way that we grow. And follow us on social media at BOTRcast. Thank you.
How do you know they're friends now? Because at the end of the movie, they're playing hockey together. And that, friends, is the true sign of friendship. It's not. I play hockey with people I downright loathe.
I won't put that in the episode. Based on George Clooney. But I gotta be honest with you, Andy, it just looks like a snowman to me. I'm not really sure what part of him is like George Clooney. No?
Okay.
Wait, I definitely did not call you Andy. I have to check the
I guess
tape
you
on
just
that
said
one.
my name like so quickly in relation to the other word. It came out like you shortened my name, and I was like, what? Hold on.
Have you ever gone by Andy?
No.
Anyone
Andy
ever
Williams
try
is
to call you
somebody
Andy?
else entirely. Oh, dude, I get called Andy all the time at work. People, all these vendors and people just assume that if my name's Andrew, I must go by Andy. Jerks. But no, never. That's why I was so confused. I was like, wait, whoa.
I would never. All right, let me find out where I was here.
Don't you ever